welcome to Combat Thoughts. I'm Robbie.
I'm Lee.
And I'm Alex.
We're going to take a deeper look at culture and philosophy behind martial arts. Take us back to the start. First experiences in martial arts in general.
Okay, so thinking about it, I was probably about 17 years old, and this was probably about 2008. And I was still sort of a young, underdeveloped boy, and I wanted to feel a bit more like a man, I guess. So I felt like every man should be able to defend himself a little bit. So I went down to the local boxing gym.
Oh, fair. I didn't realize you started off in boxing. I mean, to be fair, that's kind of weird to transition from boxing to MMA. Most people seem to stick to their guns there.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny, actually, especially around 2008 in the boxing community. I'm not sure if it's changed now, but at the time, other martial arts and MMA especially was very bad-mouthed and looked down on, and boxing was just seen as superior to everything else. And I drank the Kool-Aid a little bit on that, as they say, as well.
Nice. Okay. So how was it? What sort of gym did you get to?
Was it old school, kind of rough rounds of sparring?
You know what? It was super old school. Yeah, it's the culture is very different to your traditional Ju-Jitsu gym or even MMA gym. It tends to be a lot friendlier, a lot more sort of welcoming atmosphere. It's an old school boxing gym, and you go in there and you're at the bottom. You're not really respected, and you've got to earn your respect for people to notice you, or even to get any going on pads and stuff like that. You're not sparring, you're not going, everyone's ignoring you. You go in the boxing gym, you hit the bags, no one says a word to you the whole time you're there. But one of the great things about boxing is that it's so accessible to everyone. When I was going down, I can imagine it's about the same price now, but it was open twice a day, afternoon and evenings, 5 days a week, and it was £5 for the whole week.
Oh wow!
So it's so affordable. So
that's some budget shit.
Yeah, I mean, especially Ju-Jitsu, like a lot of people, I think that they're just sort of priced out of taking part.
Yeah. Especially in London, I think me and Robbie spoke about this before. The price of Jiu-Jitsu memberships in London is just skyrocketing.
Yeah, especially if you end up at one of them that they got the custom gis that have got their little badge on there, and you have to wear.
Well, you've got these, they call them McDojos, but and somehow they're still knocking around. But people go to them, and they've literally got to buy all of the kit. They've got to pay for gradings. It ends up costing you thousands per year, just to take part.
We had a big old whinge about that.
And you're not learning anything. You're not learning anything at these these places.
Yeah.
Like a lot of them might specialize in taekwondo and stuff like that. Not that there's not valid techniques in taekwondo, but it's the way it's trained. You're throwing kicks in the air and you're paying God knows how much.
Yeah, that's true. So how long did you stick to boxing for?
So I had about 15 fights in boxing.
Oh, cool.
Competed in a lot of the big competitions and stuff in the UK.
You do like the schoolboys and things like that.
Yeah, I competed in the novice ABAs. I competed in the London Box Cup. So good experience. I was a pretty average sort of competitor. I'd win some, I'd lose some, but that seems to be, I win. That seems to be in every combat sport I've tried. So, but I enjoy the wins and the losses. I just enjoy the experience of being there, being in the arena. You know what I mean? But yeah, so and then when I was at the boxing gym, I was there for about 3 years, I'd say. And MMA was very, as I was saying, it was very sort of looked down upon, sort of bad mouth. People were saying these guys are completely unskilled, and they're just laying on each other and sweating, and it's kind of a little bit almost homosexual in a way, maybe. But I saw it, and the reason I got into boxing and stuff in the first place was, kind of from a self-defense sort of thing, sort of just knowing how to handle myself a little bit. And I watched MMA, and I thought, these are the guys that know how to handle themselves in a real life situation the best, I think. So I started sort of secretly watching MMA, didn't tell anyone down the boxing gym.
I love how shady it has to be.
It was like watching some kind of weird porn or something. You can say.
Your parents walk in and they go, "What are you watching? Porn, porn. I'm watching porn."
Yeah. Yeah, but and then after a while, because that's what I was interested in, I started training Ju-Jitsu. And again, I trained that for about a year, in secret. Didn't tell anyone. I was training Jiu-Jitsu twice a week, and I was just keeping it a complete secret. All my friends and stuff were, they're all associated with boxing clubs, so Jiu-Jitsu was like my dirty little secret for a while.
You had an affair with Jiu-Jitsu, is what you're telling me.
Yeah. But and it's funny because nowadays I'm kind of a grappler first, I'd say. I've really fallen in love with the grappling side. I think that grappling is the foundational skill of fighting, in a sense. I think you watch any high-level boxing match or kickboxing match, any continuous fight of any kind, and people are continuously entering the clinch. Do you know what I mean? So you need to be able to handle yourself once someone grabs hold of you and there's contact. And I really respect the Thai boxing clinch as well, because you've got your wrestling style clinch, but the Thai boxing clinch is brilliant for striking from.
It's funny you say that, actually, because I grew up, as you was in boxing, I was in Thai boxing gyms. I remember at the time speaking to a lot of people who were bouncers in there, and they did jiu-jitsu and Thai boxing and really focused on the clinch. And I remember being like, "Oh, do you just want to punch them?" And they was like, look at any fight that happens outside of a nightclub, and everybody thinks they're a wrestler. It's kind of, it always goes into a clinch. It's always somebody in like a nuggy control. And
yeah. I mean, watch boxing, watch high-level boxing, and they're continuously clinching and needing to be separated, and without that referee separating them, once you enter the clinch, you're grappling.
I do have one question I want to ask, and it is kind of a little bit back to what you said earlier. I think I got into MMA around similar time you did.
Okay.
What was the first kind of UFC fights you saw? Who piqued your interest and made you go, this is some good shit?
I was a big fan of BJ Penn back in the day, because he had some good boxing technique, and I was a boxer, and I thought he's got good hands, but he's also got these weird characteristics where he's very flexible, and he's just dominating people on the ground as well. So that's why I thought, oh, boxing and jiu-jitsu, they seem to go well together. And also just the way BJ Penn didn't necessarily look like a crazy steroided out athlete. Do you know what I mean? He looked just, it was almost, I almost first looked at him, and you don't think much to look at people like that, but then you're just so surprised by their ability.
I think BJ Penn was mine. BJ Penn and Diego Sanchez was the one that got me.
Oh my God, Lee, you cursed them You look at those two nowadays.
I know, yeah, but that fight was the one that I remember watching. I was in like sixth form at the time. I remember watching. I stayed up and watched it and was like, "Oh my fucking god, what is this? This is brilliant."
Gotta wonder, Reese. You said you were at the boxing gym for 3 years,
Yeah.
and you fought 15 times in that.
Yeah,
did you
yeah,
fight-
you know, and that wasn't.
That's a lot.
It wasn't. I was one of the, I was one of the considered going at a slower pace than everyone else. In amateur boxing, you have guys that it's every weekend. It's seasonal. So you have a season where there's competitions on. But when it's competition season, it's if you're really serious, you're going out every couple of weeks all over the country.
Is it just MMA that's like really lazy about having fights? Because it always baffles me. Because I do hear similar things about amateur amateur boxers having a lot. MMA fighters seem to pull out of every other fight most of the time, and then we don't barely have any anyway. And the careers are way shorter. Like, is it just MMA that's bad? Like, what is it?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, there's a little bit of you're training for an amateur fight. Do you really need a full 8-week camp that goes absolutely perfect, or you're going to pull out? Do you know what I mean? But at the same time, as someone who's fought a fair bit in boxing and a fair bit in MMA, you're risking your health a lot more in MMA. You're not fighting every weekend in MMA. It's not happening. Yeah. You're getting, even if when you win, you're getting hurt in MMA. You're limping for a few days, even when you win. And that's the same. Probably, I mean, the Thais fight very regularly as well. I mean, it's crazy how I think they do that because their legs must get busted up. And that's after every fight I had, I was it's always just a few leg kicks you took, but almost didn't feel in the fight. You're feeling them a few hours afterwards. So yeah, I think maybe it can go a bit far with MMA sometimes, where especially when you're fighting semi-professional or amateur, you're expected to train like a professional in a sense, with the cutting weight, with the with 8-week training camp. That doesn't make much sense to me. I would have thought when you're a semi-professional or amateur competitor, you're going to be just training regularly, and the fight's almost a part of your training and development.
Because was that your thing in amateur boxing? You would you wasn't cutting much weight. You was just jumping in at your walk around weight.
Yeah, you're not cutting any weight in amateur boxing. You're weighing in about an hour before you fight.
Okay.
And so yeah, you're not cutting for amateur boxing, but boxers in general, even at the professional level, they're not cutting as much as MMA fighters do. I think that must be they say it's sort of the wrestling culture crossing over to MMA.
Yeah, well, I mean, to be fair, wrestling seems to be where you can get the most benefit out of mass. It feels like Ju-Jitsu is famed for being like equalizing weights, and boxing, it does seem like I don't know what it is. Maybe the smaller people have a speed advantage, so it all kind of balances out.
Yeah.
But you go to wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, things like reach and speed are more important in boxing, I think. But yeah, in MMA, there's a lot more grappling involved. You can really, someone bigger, size, I think matters a little bit more in MMA than it does in boxing.
Yeah. So I was wondering, like, do you think people should cut it down then in terms of the training camp? Like, what do you think the optimum amount for people to be fighting is? Because obviously it's not every weekend, but you think that 8 weeks of perfect training camp is probably too much. Where's the middle ground?
Yeah, I think if you're a competitor, you could probably because the whole thing of having an 8-week training camp and then maybe you stop training for a bit and then or train less for a bit. I think every month, every couple of months, you could, if you're a developing amateur that wants to go pro in MMA, you probably just want to get used to being in the cage, get used to the feeling. The thing is, if you take too long between fights, it's like having your first fight every time.
Yep.
Yeah, I made 2 years between each of mine. That's all good.
I saw Tom Aspinall recently do a UFC interview, and he said very similar. He said he didn't give a shit about his amateur record and was just like, I'm getting as much cage time as I can, and we're getting used to being in there. And he's like, the aim was always to go pro and to get more. He said he ran out of opponents in the amateurs, and that's why he had to go pro sooner than he probably would have wanted to.
I think that's the attitude, and that's kind of the attitude in amateur boxing as well. My amateur boxing trainer used to always say records are for DJs. Because you should be worrying just about your development when you're an amateur. People care about their wins, and people care about their wins and losses in amateur. I mean, I did, but you probably shouldn't put that much stock in it, especially if you are looking to go pro. And if you're not looking to go pro and you're just looking to challenge yourself, then again, the wins and losses don't really matter in that regard either.
Yeah, I kind of thought the same. I remember training for the shock and awe fight, kind of being like, even if I lose at this point, it's been a good experience, and I've got an absolute shit ton better at martial arts because of it. And then,
oh yeah. How many people? Shock and Awe is a great show. I've competed on there a few times, and how many people get to experience that? Just like walking out and fighting in a cage in front of it must be like a couple of thousand people there or something, and you got your music playing and stuff like that. It's and then. Win or lose, you get the benefit of being in the arena and not being on the sidelines, so people on the sidelines can't say anything.
So to take it back a bit to the whole story, so you do boxing for a couple of years, start secretly having a love affair with BJJ and keeping it behind closed doors. What happens next?
So I continued to sort of, take an interest in Ju-Jitsu. I'm starting to get less of an interest in boxing. I'm watching a lot of MMA, and I'm thinking I've got a bit of Ju-Jitsu, I've got a bit of boxing now. I could do that. I could, I also thought that MMA was the best art for the most realistic, unarmed fighting system, so I didn't really watch boxing anymore. I mainly watched MMA, and MMA became my goal. I wanted to get in the cage and compete, and I was kind of a bit done with competing in the ring, and wanted a bit of a new challenge. And it was no matter what you do beforehand, I think when you start MMA or you're a beginner again, you think that you're not going to be, but I came over from boxing. I had some competitive experience. I thought I was going to turn up at an MMA gym and spar and just wreck everyone basically with my boxing skills. But first person I sparred in an MMA context. I got right in there and sparred. Didn't really know what I was doing. Turned up for MMA sparring first session. I was that sort of cocky about it. And, first round I went with a Thai boxer, and I'd never been kicked in the legs before, and that was an eye-opening experience. And suddenly I realized he's too far away for me to punch him, and my legs are really hurting, and now I can't actually put weight on my legs.
Yeah, I think we've all had a bit of that at one point or another. It's a bit of a shock to the system.
Yeah,
leg kicks especially leg kicks, they're one of the best things from Thai boxing and stuff like that. I mean, they're just that you don't realize, no, you can't realize how effective they are from just watching them. You know,
yeah.
there's a completely different, you understand them on a completely different level, you know, once you've felt them, you know.
I was the other way, so I used to train Thai, and in the back room there's like 6 guys who had gis on, and they always used to do the sales pitch as we was leaving the class, and like, come give it a go, come give it a go. And I was very cocky one day and was like, oh, I'll do this. I remember getting double legged and just having the shit choked out of me and being like, that was fucking awesome.
Yeah. Well, I didn't tell you about the next round that I sparred. Jay Butler, who is a very good black belt grappling competitor, and at the time was a very good MMA fighter. And yeah, that was what was in for me next, getting dragged to the floor and, you know, mercilessly submitted. But, you know, every time I experienced these things, you know, I experienced it in boxing, I experienced it in jiu-jitsu, I experienced it in MMA. Every time I got my ass kicked, I was just like, now I have to learn this. You know, I can't accept the fact that, you know, people might know this and I don't. So, you know, this I'm gonna have to learn this now.
As that, there's a lot of people who spoke to who've had like competition careers, and overwhelmingly it's I got my ass kicked, and like it was real trial by fire, and then it was like I need to get good at this. Like there's such a switch with people who've competed where it's like, you've kicked my ass and now you're gonna teach it me.
Yeah, I'm gonna get you back one day.
Yeah. So I got to wonder about Jay Butler. Did he leg lock the shit out of you? Because he taught me his calf slicer one time, and I fucking love that move. It is the sneakiest fucking move I've ever learned in my life. Just little calf slicer where you just like you do a single leg takedown and jump into it, and he loves that shit.
You know what? You know, this was still kind of back in the day. It was kind of still like, you know, there wasn't the Danaher system and stuff wasn't around. You know, people weren't really leg locking.
Okay.
You know, I remember leg locking coming on the scene sort of around the time where EBI was sort of kicking off. But you know, he's fantastic at all, you know, all forms. He was just, you know, choking me out back in the day and so like leg locking me.
Whereabouts was it you trained first for MMA?
So I started, there was a pretty good little MMA team, you know, back in the day, Andy Roberts, BJJ, you know, there's a few people fighting pro. And we just had a room of like really good, tough guys, you know, and you know, everyone could wrestle, everyone could strike, and you could, you know, everyone's jiu-jitsu was good, and you could really learn a well-rounded game down there.
Fair. And did your boxing mates ever find out you were sneaking off there?
They found out when I had my first MMA fight, and it was, you know, put out there. You know, it was on the net. I shared it on my social media and stuff like that. And you know, I heard from a few friends that I have down still at the boxing club about what people had to say about that. You know, me and my, you know, fairly. I mean, the outfit I picked for my first MMA fight, you know, I was essentially in a pair of hot pants out there.
Oh, you didn't go for the Speedos, did you?
I was like, I wanted like black. I just want like the black Valley Tudo style sort of shorts, you know.
Well, at least you go for shorts.
What?
At least you went for shorts. You ever seen the
like who done that in the UFC?
There's the one in the UFC.
and Dana's like, he will never fight again.
Yeah, you're cut. Yeah, and it was like a guy that's been around for a while, a bit of a legend.
It was tragic, to be fair.
Yeah, and there was it Junior Albini that wore like a nappy looking thing? Did you guys see that? It was
Oh,
a couple of years ago. It looked like he was
yeah.
wearing. He looked
It
like, and
didn't.
he's kind of a bit chubby as well and bald, so he looks like a giant baby.
We don't fucking help ourselves, do we? This is why boxers hate us.
But yeah, you know that I think attitudes has kind of changed. I've still got some friends. You know, I've got one friend in particular that boxed for Team GB on amateur boxing, and you know he's you know all on board with MMA. He loves watching it, and I think that's similar now with a lot of people in the boxing community, especially people like Conor McGregor. You know, I think you know boxing and MMA has got to the point where you know boxers can watch it and appreciate what's happening. You know, whereas you know back in 2008, 2009, you know the level of striking, you know, did have a fair amount to be desired.
And do you think that's the main reason for the change in attitude, the change in striking, or is it something else?
Yeah, I think you know recently, guys' takedown defense in MMA are so good nowadays, you know, and they're so hard to hold down that there's a lot of striking, a lot of good striking, and I think that makes it kind of more accessible for maybe your casual viewer. It's not what I like. It's not what I would choose. You know, I love to see people grapple. You know, I basically just you know whenever a UFC's been on, I watch the grapplers first. You know, any fights I've heard of that were a good grappling match, you know, they're the ones I'm going to.
When the fans start wooing, that's when you get interested.
Yeah. No, well, I also like it's a bit of a I get a bit of like a hipster thing, like the thing everyone else likes. You know, I'm a connoisseur, an MMA connoisseur, so I don't like the champs. I like the guys on the undercard.
Yeah.
So how long did you train at the MMA gym before you had your first fight?
Well, you know, when I first turned up there, I was training with all the guys, and I was being sort of heavily encouraged to fight quite quickly. You know, because of the background I had, and I was picking up wrestling. I really sort of fell in love with wrestling while I was there because I knew that one, I wanted to stay on my feet, but again, you know, sort of enjoyed double legging and single legging people. I was, you know, I'm a sort of smaller, nimble sort of guy, you know, pretty quick, so I can shoot under someone's hips, you know, decently fast. So yeah, I kind of, you know, and that's where the bridge between striking and grappling started for me. I sort of went, you know, from mainly enjoying striking to, oh, wrestling's interesting, to, you know, oh, once you get someone to the ground in wrestling, you know, now what are you going to do? And now, you know, Ju-Jitsu is, or, you know, no-gi grappling is, you know, what I mostly focus on these days.
And how did that compare to the boxing fight experience?
There was a lot more pressure, I think, in MMA because, you know, you've got this big build-up and they tend to make a bigger deal, like shock and awe. There's no amateur boxing competitions even that are like the level of like showmanship and stuff on shock and awe. You know, you're not doing any, you know, they're not asking you to do little interviews and stuff beforehand. So yeah, I think it's a lot more pressure. I mean, there's something just with that MMA. I mean, the first thing I noticed was stepping into the cage, and that was just you know, it feels kind of badass getting into a cage. You know, stepping into a cage versus stepping into a ring. You feel more awesome getting in that cage and the cage door shutting. You know, it's a slightly different feeling. You know, it feels a bit more like, you know, shit's about to go down here. You know, things.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I mean, I will give Shock and all that. The production value on that, despite the fact that it's like a lot of it is amateur fights, the production value is through the fucking roof.
They put on a good show, you know, and it's you know, and you get some good fights there, and it's, you know, it's great for, you know, I think it's a great opportunity for people, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's the fire down the walkway. Oh wait, do they have that anymore? The fire down the walkway.
They had it when I was there. Yeah, you got pyrotechnics, and yeah,
Then they got the
mad.
proper commentators, proper filming team. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's like you're in. Yeah, it's like you're a friggin' like, you know, like you're a high level pro or something. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
you know, kind of get that experience. Yeah,
Scares the shit out of you first time round though.
every time. You know, and I think, you know, yeah, it's a bit more laid back. You know, in amateur boxing, they're shorter fights. You know, and there's also, it's like one in, one out. You're not doing a walkout. You're not got any music when you're coming out or anything like that. There's certain rules, like you have to be clean shaven to enter the ring. If you are not clean shaven, the referee will send you to the bathroom for a shave. And there's all sorts of strange customs and rules like that in.
Oh wow!
boxing.
I did not know that.
You can't have a beard.
No facial hair. No, you've got to be clean shaven. You know,
That's madness.
Is this like some old school like military rule that's been kind of kept?
I think so. I mean, they say it's like health and safety somehow, but you know,
fuck off. I think it's one thing, like MMA, you can ask someone to cut their beard if it's too long, and I think that someone did that to Emil Meek once.
Oh yeah, his opponent. Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah. But to be fair, also his beard was like down to his waist at that point, or something stupid like that. So I think they just thought it was going to get in the way.
I mean, and it could definitely. You know, I definitely grappled with people in the past where, you know, the beard does stop you from getting in there on a rear naked choke, or, you know, you're trying to stick a guillotine on someone and that beard, you're fumbling around that beard.
Or the other way,
this is defensively sound.
Or the other way, you don't want some.
I don't know if you got enough defense there, Robbie. You might have to,
no, it's fair.
Grow a bit more defense.
That does need way more defense. That's lacking. Or the other way, you don't need some Andrei Arlovsky chest on top of you, like all these curly hairs in your face. That's the.
It helps, yeah. And I'm a big believer in the mythology of the beard giving you better punching absorbing ability. Yeah.
It's like
you a better chin.
+3 to your chin, right?
Cushion for.
There's just something about it. When you've got a beard, it's harder to knock you out. I don't know why.
I thought beards make you stronger, and when you chop them off, you like lose all of your strength. Kind of like when you wash your belt.
Samson in the Old Testament, yeah.
Yeah, like washing your belt, all your skills will go.
Yeah, I don't wear a belt, so you know. There's how much skills I
have. How have you found experiences before fights? Because you said, well, I mean, Lee joked that the whole experience will scare the shit out of you, and you said every time. But you've also competed a lot. Do you find it chill going into the cage? Do you get super nervous?
I'd say in terms of people in the back, I'm not the most nervous. You know, you see some people, and you know they're they're having like a nervous breakdown every single fight. You know, but you know I get nervous. You know, I find it difficult to sort of eat food and stuff on the day. You know, I'm not. You know, I've got sort of that sick feeling in my stomach a little bit. You know, for sure. But you know, it's just it's a mixture of like nerves and excitement, and you know, it's just pressure, but it's good for you in a way. I think it's good for that's the mental overcoming. You know, I think it's good for a person.
You think it's good to learn, like for outside of MMA, or you think it's just
Keeps you
Yeah,
sharp,
I mean,
perform well, kind of help you kind of fire on all cylinders on the show.
yeah, just I think you should put a bit of pressure on yourself, because then you're challenging yourself if you're putting pressure on yourself, if you're feeling nervous, and you're expanding as a person when you put pressure on yourself. If you don't, it's almost a bit of a shame if you don't feel that before a fight. If you don't feel that almost that anxiety, like you want to just, you don't want to do this, you want to quit, you want to maybe run out of the arena and get in your car and just drive away. But then then you follow through on what you said you were going to do, and you do it. And I think it's good for mental discipline.
Well, you've not run away. The amount of MMA shows I've been to where people have run away is.
I've seen it. Yeah. I've seen it. I've seen it in amateur boxing as well. People, where is he? And people, no one can find him. And I understand it. I understand it. I understand it. Yeah.
I've always understood. Well, I get horribly nervous before the not very many fights I've had. But running away just seems kind of inconceivable. I don't know what sort of state I'd have to be in to be like, nah, fuck it, I'm out. See you guys. And just like,
yeah. I mean, it's short-sighted, isn't it? Because you're just thinking about how you feel right now in the moment, but how you're going to feel tomorrow or the next day. Do you know what I mean? I say that it can be great mentally for you, but if you do run away and give up, that's psychologically freaking destroying. You're gonna need. I'd need therapy if I did that.
You say that, but if you turned up and there was a Yoel Romero looking guy on the scale opposite you, I think I'd be like, might have to take this one.
Well,
yeah.
Well, there are levels. Like if I turn up and
wait a second, this guy, he's not bantamweight, surely.
Yeah, the thing is, if I turn up and I'm looking at him and I'm like, that looks a lot like Khabib without a beard. That's the level that I'll be like, I'm not getting in that ring. Like if it's just
good neck. If you've got a good neck beard, get worried.
Oh no! I need to just shave the tash, and then it'll be the Dagestani style.
Yeah. I think if it's time for you to go in there and take your licks and get beaten up, then that's what you got to do.
I suppose at middleweight, you've kind of got big monsters, juiced up monsters. Do you get juiced up monsters at bantamweight? Or you kind of get people where you go, you're clearly on something.
It's not really something I ever think about. It's not something that I let concern me whether someone's taking something or anything like that. I assume not, but I also don't really care if people do.
The ones who look juiced up and big, like the ones who look like they're on something, there's not really any correlation about them winning from what I've seen. Like, it seems like the people, professional level, from what I always hear, it's the people who can recover better and train better. And accusations fly around all the time about people who are on steroids but don't fucking look like it. So yeah, I kind of get not worrying about it. If you do look at someone, you're like, oh, they look juiced. But I do always wonder if that's actually something you do need to worry about.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I kind of see what you're saying. There's all kinds of physical body types in MMA. Someone like Max Holloway is an amazing fighter, but doesn't look juiced up in the slightest. Do you know what I mean? And there's, it's true for, one of the great things about fighting is that there's not like a set archetype for how you have to be, how your body has to be successful. You can make it work for you, depending on what your physical characteristics are.
Do you find that's less the case in boxing? Like you need a certain frame and build for it? Is it because the MMA is flexible that you can do all those different body shapes?
Yeah, because I think when you limit the ranges and make the rules more specific, then it narrows down the body types a bit more. Because you can in MMA, you can, you've got so much more freedom in which to where to take it, and what sort of strategy you can have.
Yeah, and I've always that's always a thing I used to hear a while ago, that as MMA progresses, everyone's going to start looking the same, and everyone's going to start becoming MMA people rather than other people. We did a whole podcast about this, but it's just not happened.
No,
Specialists win, and everyone fights differently.
It's almost like, how good is your A skill, and then how good can your accompanying B skill be with it? Do you know what I mean? Like, you've got all the guys that are sort of specialists, but they do need to be at a certain level in other areas. You can't be one dimensional. But I think we are seeing that it helps to have a strength. You don't really want to be a jack of all trades in terms of striking, grappling, everything. You want an area of I think MMA is much more about going in there and imposing your strategy and making it your fight. And that can be, if you're a grappler versus a striker, and you can potentially completely shut down that whole area of MMA. You may not, you've got a lot of Ju-Jitsu guys these days. Jiu-Jitsu is not as effective in the modern MMA era, I feel like. And that's because people can avoid it nowadays. They don't have to do Jiu-Jitsu with you.
I've kind of thought this more and more recently, that people talk about being well-rounded and the importance of it. But I kind of feel like aggressively, you don't need to be well-rounded. Aggressively, you don't need these different aspects where you can attack. I feel like it's more about being defensively well-rounded, because that's why jiu-jitsu wins so much at amateur levels, because people who haven't got jiu-jitsu defense just get taken down and get strangled.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean they need to be able to submit people in order to stop that.
Yeah, you can get really good. I mean, there's some guys in the MMA, they're really hard to submit, but you'd never catch them, actually submitting anyone themselves. So yeah, I think you're right about that. You've got someone like, it fascinates me, like Derek Lewis.
Yes.
Fuck wrestling, fuck jiu-jitsu. If you take me down, I'm just gonna lay there and let you get tired grappling me, and then
stand up.
Eventually we'll get up, and I'll just knock your head off.
There's a YouTube video of I think it's like 12 minutes of Derek Lewis just standing up, and it's like he's on bottom side control, and he just goes, "Nah, I've had enough."
Yeah. Bench him off, or just roll over and just get on all fours and just be a big lump of a man. Yeah.
I mean, there's something to be said for the amount of mass he carries, just being hard to choke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was listening to him on Joe Rogan today, and he said he was 290 pounds. So he's huge.
Yeah, I mean, even someone like Francis Ngannou, we know he kind of got exposed in the Stipe fight. But, even with the rematch now, I'm thinking, yeah, like Robbie, the point Robbie was making, has Francis Ngannou just improved those weaknesses enough to be the top dog now, and just
he doesn't need to take Stipe down. He needs to be able to defend the takedowns against the cage and keep his gas tank going, and he clearly has been working on it.
Yeah, and he's huge as well, and he's so powerful, and it's but yeah, it is interesting what we're seeing in MMA, where it's not the they always used to bang on about Rory McDonald being, oh, he's trained just MMA since he was 13 or something like that, and that means he's going to be the best. But actually, and I found this actually with training MMA. I took the route of I've always been a believer in sort of train a lot of your styles separately and just put all the MMA together like once a week. And that's because what I find guys that train MMA all the time, they never get into the depth of the individual styles. They learn how to throw punches a bit, but they never really learn how to use a jab. They learn a bit of Thai boxing work, but they never really, they can't really check leg kicks. It's not automatic. Do you know what I mean? They can do a bit of jiu-jitsu, but if they went into jiu-jitsu class, they get, they're getting handled. So I think when you're spreading yourself too, I think again this reinforces Robbie's point that you can spread yourself too thin in MMA.
I've always thought about that I think there's kind of a healthy middle ground. Obviously, you can't just learn MMA because it's huge and you can't focus on anything. You can't get into any depth in anything if you try and learn just MMA every time. But I would say I don't know if just learning like boxing or Thai boxing is very necessary. I think there would be a certain way to just have you train MMA striking. And if you can if you can put time into MMA striking, I'm sure you would learn those different skills. I think part of the trouble is that when you try and just learn MMA as a whole, rather than focusing purposefully on specific abilities, you just kind of get a drizzle of all the different aspects, and it's quite hard to take it all in.
You're right about that. I think the best way to train MMA is to split it up into ranges. You've got a sort of standing range, like punching, kicking range. You've got the clinch, which would be Thai clinch, Thai elbows and knees and stuff like that, but also the wrestling clinch. And then you've got the ground. I think splitting it up into ranges is probably it may be optimal. But as well, when you split it up into ranges, you're doing MMA striking. You need a coach that really does understand striking. The problem with your one size fits all MMA coach is more likely than not, because this is the case for most people, is that they're only really proficient in teaching one range. Maybe two, but they know a little bit in the others. But they don't have that depth themselves, to draw from and pass on. So I think the high level guys, the MMA striking coaches over places like AKA and all those places in America, they're world class striking trainers. And I think MMA is even, I feel like the stand up is evolving into its own style in a way. It's kind of like it's become a bit more karate. You've got but also boxing is more heavily favored than in a lot of other striking styles. And that leads to weird things like the calf kick being crazy effective.
Are you a Jack Slack fan?
Yeah, I listen to Fights Gone By podcast.
Yeah, he loves that. He loves talking about that, how the boxing has led to the calf kick quite a lot. The way that people's stance has changed and led into that technique.
Yeah, well, it's true, and because I experienced this as well with leg kicks in general. Is I was always taught in boxing to keep my weight on my front foot, and I think in MMA what is optimal is actually the opposite of that. I think you want to more favor the back foot, and that kind of makes your style look a little bit more like karate, I think, and you want your guard, as in your arms, to be covering a wider range of your body, because you always want your hands to be available to dig underhooks. You can't just go pillows to your face and shell up. like some boxers and Thai boxers do as well. In MMA, your hands have always got to be doing. They've got to do so many things. So you've got to have this more open, almost karate-looking style guard. It seems to me.
Yeah, I know what you see about the low arms, because I always think it's interesting how I think it depends on where your skills are, what you can get away with. If you're a brilliant guy off your back, I feel like you can afford to have this high guard and be defending your head, because whether it's a wrestler or a striker, you've always got that defense, and they can take you down. But if you're sick off your back, they'll be hesitant to. So I kind of, I don't know. I need to have a proper think about this and have a look into it. But I feel like jiu-jitsu guys in general do tend to have that higher, like more boxing style hand setup.
I think, you know, there's ways to make that work in MMA. I think, you know, you've got someone like Justin Gaethje, and you know he lowers his level more. You know, you can have I think you can have your hands up by your head as long as you're in a bit more of a crouch, and it's going to be therefore difficult for someone to get under your hips.
Bit more braced for the job.
Yeah, but you get your style as well, where some guys, they don't seem to give a damn about being taken down, and you know they're gonna, you know, attack you from all angles. You know, you got like a Tony Ferguson sort of style. He sort of lunges in, and you know, if you go to take him down, then you're probably just going to get chewed up in the clinch or submitted or something.
Yeah, well, it is interesting still, the range of like stances and looks. And to talk about like a recent one, Adesanya and Blachowicz. I'm not sure. Blachowicz. Oh god, Blachowicz is the guy from the Nazi game with the who am I thinking of? The bloody one where the supernatural Nazis.
Oh, Wolfenstein.
Yes, Wolfenstein. Yeah.
That's not something you and your family play at Christmas.
No, Wolfenstein. Sorry, I'm getting mixed up between their fucking names, aren't I? Anyway, Jan. We'll go with Jan and Izzy. What I find interesting about them is that they've even got. I mean, obviously, feints aside, which apparently was making Jan lose the first round. We'll ignore that. Feints aside, they actually use quite similar attacks. Like it's all switch hitting, and it's all like quite hard crosses through the center, and they do use the jab here and there, but they look totally different, even though they use like aggressively. They do use very overlapping techniques, I think.
Yeah, I guess so. In terms of the Jan and Adesanya fight, I think it was like you mentioned the feints. That's quite because the commentary was and it was. But yeah, even when I was watching that, they do very similar things, but there's a certain smoothness and style Adesanya sort of has to his technique, which did kind of make you feel like he was in control a little bit. But towards the end, and had that extra skill set to fall back on.
He kept trying to make him bite on the head kick, which I saw, and the commentators were making it so much worse because every time he'd throw the head kick, the commentators would be like, "Oh, he's got him!" And it's like, "No, not this time." "Oh, he's got him!" No, not this time. And it was like you're wishing it because you can kind of see that one thing.
It's almost like everyone was expecting Adesanya to win and for it to be the Adesanya show. So he was the spotlight was just on him. It's almost like no one was even watching Jan; they were just looking at Adesanya.
It's the thing is that Adesanya's story isn't. He's quite stiff. He's big and strong. He's not kind of doing the kind of funky stuff as Adesanya's doing at middleweight. It was his coming out show to be like, this is going to set up the John Jones fight. And I kind of liked that was spoiled.
I always think it's a bit of the UFC marketing machine anyway, because in hindsight, I was like, why the hell did we think like Adesanya was going to do, not that he was going to do well, but why why was he the favorite? It seems kind of insane to me because, I mean, what, it's the first time he's going up to that weight class. I know he's boxed or kickboxed at heavyweight and can obviously strike, but it's like we talked about the wrestling. The extra mass makes a huge difference, and I think that's exactly what happened in the last 2 rounds. Like, he obviously hadn't put on the mass for it. First time going up there, and Jan is the champ. Like, he's been the underdog in so many of his fights, except people still think he's going to lose every time. It's kind of a UFC marketing machine about Adesanya, in the same way that we thought Conor McGregor had a chance against Floyd.
Yeah.
Insane.
Yeah. It's hard to see. I think it's difficult to appreciate what's good about Jan. It's quite subtle. He doesn't necessarily look like a master technician. But what he does obviously works.
He does very well. That footprint on Reyes's side.
Oh, I remember.
That was disgusting. That was awful.
Brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I will say about Izzy is I think his slick style makes people think he's doing a lot better than he is. Because versus Vettori, now I don't deny he won that fight, but actually if the judges had scored it the other way, I wouldn't have been mad, because I remember watching that and being like, he looks slick and he looks great, but is he landing more? I mean, yeah, a little bit, but not that much. He just looks good when he's fighting. Not to say he's not good, but he could have lost the match to Vettori. He could have lost the match to Gastelum.
Yeah, I understand the point that you're making. Yeah, there is a certain aspect. He looks smooth. He looks technical. He looks like he knows what he's doing. Yeah,
but that goes back to your point you made not long ago around the fight in your range and fight in your style. If you're happy to stand there with Izzy and kind of fight at range and fight a technical style, he'll look better. If the fight's even, he'll look better doing it and win. And I think that's what happened in the Darren Till fight. I think striking, I think they probably cancel each other out. They've both seen each other's looks before, but Izzy would look better doing it and get the win.
Yeah, so fight smoothly, you might win more.
Did he fight Till? I can't remember that fight.
No, they're pushing it now.
Yeah.
I think he said something about the only fight that interests him at middleweight at the moment is against Till, which I don't know. Is middleweight's not exactly a thin division, is it?
Yeah, I mean, off the top of my head, thinking right now, I'm struggling to think who the rightful number one contender should be. But
so it's Whittaker, isn't it? Whittaker beat Cannonier. Izzy doesn't want to rematch Whittaker because he's already beat him. I think Vettori's up there.
Who's Vettori fighting?
Just signed to fight Till.
Okay.
So I think it's whoever wins that one impressively will probably jump Whittaker.
That's a damn shame, because you know what? Whittaker is one of the most... I think Whittaker's probably one of the most underrated fighters, around. People don't seem to give a fuck about him, but he's awesome.
I don't know if he's past his peak, I was really high on Whittaker, but since he's come back from all of his issues, I don't know if he's... I don't know. I don't know. I hope he is. I'd like to see him continue to do well.
Share a story of why I hate Robert Whittaker.
Okay.
UFC 160 in Vegas was my 21st birthday, and present from my mum and dad was tickets for me and my girlfriend. So we go. But do you know what? If she's listening, thanks, Jenna, because you sat there through all the undercards whilst nobody was there. And in the bookies in the casino, I put a bet on every fight of the card, and I got every one of them right, apart from the Whittaker. Oh, what was his name? He was the guy from Tough, Colton Smith.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
I was like,
the left hook or something.
And I was like, Colton Smith is going to wrestle fuck him, and I put Colton Smith to win, and Whitaker knocked him out, and I got every other fight right, and I would have won like $5,000, and I was absolutely devastated.
Accumulators, I find they never work
Never.
in MMA betting.
Never.
Like literally, there's always one fight that doesn't go the way that everyone thought it was going to go, because MMA is just it's so unpredictable.
UFC, I'll give you. Bellator, all in on Coca.
Yeah.
I tell you what does work in UFC though, if you're looking for bets, over under on the rounds. You get way more accurate if you can kind of tell by fighting styles. If you know who's fighting, you can kind of tell who's doing over 1.5 rounds. And if you get a few fights together where you're pretty certain, it's modest, but you can make a bit of money. Yeah.
So, what do you guys think is the the future evolutions in MMA? Do you think that? I mean, in my opinion, I think I see a lot more striking these days in MMA. But do you think that grappling's gonna have more of a resurgence? Because there's this, there's this certain sort of, kind of the Khabib wrestling style, that is also. It's winning people a lot of fights lately. But what I'm wondering is, are we going to see grappling be on top again?
I reckon so, because I don't think MMA's matured enough where it's going to settle out, because there are still breakout techniques, which is weird, like the calf kick, right? I think the calf kick, for example, is going to slowly go away as people's stance changes, and then if you come across someone with a really karate or boxing stance, you're going to calf kick them, and otherwise it's not going to be that useful anymore, and everyone's going to be like, oh, the calf kick, it used to be really useful and now it's not. No, it's just people's stance. It's going to change to deal with that.
Do you think that if people stand narrower to avoid the calf kick, that it'll open up people for takedowns again?
Yeah.
There's no decisions. There's only trade-offs to everything you do. There are only trade-offs.
Which is my thing of why I think MMA is going to be cyclical. It's going to be waves. You're going to go from. I think we're going back into the grappling generation now. I think we've had. We're coming to the end of the kind of striking prowess. We're going back. You look at Khabib. You look at Islam Makhachev. Like they're dominating really good people. And now the trade-off is, we need to get back into the defensive wrestling. What that's going to do is going to make the standard of striking kind of level out a little bit. And then you're going to get kind of next generation strikers coming through who are going to start knocking people out again. I think we're just going to go through cycles. We did a podcast. I don't think there's going to be an MMA style. I think we're just going to constantly be looping back around.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of breakout techniques as well, I mean, you've got stuff like the Dagestani handcuff that everyone does now, which is, there's almost, I feel like the grappling in MMA is splitting off a lot more recently compared to the grappling in sort of no-gi submission grappling style. But I'm really, I'm optimistic about the really good no-gi grappling guys. Like, what would happen if someone like Gordon Ryan went into MMA? How is Conan's style going to be going forward?
Ryan's expressed a lot of interest in the past into going into MMA eventually. So, and Danaher is obviously very interested in it as well. So I would foresee him eventually moving over. And I think obviously at the moment the leg locks are the big thing in Ju-Jitsu, and it always takes a few years for Ju-Jitsu techniques to really transition over, because obviously they're not quite right. People need to kind of work out how to incorporate them. I would foresee a lot of people, even if it's not the heel hooks and stuff that comes in so much, people can just start using leg entanglements as defensive techniques and bringing that in more, which is going to transition things. But
we're already seeing a bit of that, aren't we, with like Oliveira and stuff, and Demian Maia with Ben Askren and stuff.
Ryan Hall's doing a good job with it. Ryan Hall's 50-50s worked really well.
he's got one of the most unique MMA styles, out there at the moment, and I love it. I love how
I love it as well. Like
it's
you
so
know what
weird,
gets me.
and I love it.
You know what gets me about who was the Darren Elkins fight, right? Against in the Darren Elkins fight, it was brilliant to watch because he knew he didn't have as good hands, so every time he got into punching range, he just goes limps to the floor, limps to the floor, and threatens. And it looks like he's poured all of his striking time into those fucking wheel kicks, which is a very niche skill, right? Because people don't do it because they're afraid of getting taken down or going wrong.
It's kind of like baiting people in to shoot. Oh look, there's my back. Go on, take it, and then suddenly you're fucked. I'm really interested to see how Gary Tonin progresses, because he seems to be really pushing his striking, and in his last fight, his striking looked a lot better. But he also has.
I don't want to see his striking. I want to see him. I want to see him employ that high-level no-gi grappling style in MMA. I think that would be the most interesting thing. I mean, the thing that's a shame of, I think striking is always going to be at a bit of an disadvantage rather in MMA because of the rounds. I don't see how rounds make sense. I don't know why when you're fighting you stop for a minute and go sit in the corner and then start again. I think personally, I would
boxing
get
hang
rid
up,
of it.
isn't it?
Yeah, I want to see the fight progress naturally how it would. I mean, why are we breaking it up and they're going to sit on a stool for a minute and then we're coming back and restarting the fight? How is that? How is that realistic to any real form of combat?
I agree. It'd be good to see a fight with just like one. I don't know if you could do 15 minutes because people get breaks in between. I don't know. Professional, a single 9-minute round, like a 9-minute fight.
I think people. I mean, back in the day, there was no time limit. People went for ages. I know it's a higher pace these days, and if you let people go too long, it probably gets a bit boring. But I think if you put people in there for 15 minutes straight, the pacing would change a bit, and people would adapt.
Or even the prize structure. Your first round's 10 minutes.
I think
that'd be cool.
I think the trouble is, as cool as all these things are, most places are going to copy the UFC because ultimately the UFC is what people see, and the UFC is what people expect. And I don't know what incentive the UFC has to move away from the rounds because. Like, it's not a lot, but it gives them more advertising ability and it gives them more stand-up fights, and stand-up fights are more popular. I would not foresee the UFC anytime soon moving towards a style that favors a grappler.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're in the minority to the just bleed kind of guys, right?
Certainly, yeah. It would only, I want it to be as realistic. I want it to be the most realistic unarmed combat possible. But yeah, it's become a mainstream sport now, which in a sense is a little bit of a shame. I've got my.
You like the fringe?
I love all the old stuff. I go back and I watch the old stuff just with like nostalgia. Even before I was even watching, it's just. It was just interesting back then, what people didn't know what they were doing, and they were just sort of, making it up on the fly. And it was just so interesting to see people's very individual styles.
I always used to enjoy the real pixelated Hicks and Gracie turning up at a gym and being like 3-hour kumite, let's go.
I love those Gracie challenge. Is it Gracie challenge?
Yeah.
I love that. I think that stuff is awesome. just seeing dojo storms and shit like that. I think that's badass.
I had a thought about what you asked before about how MMA style is going to change. And though I think you do need to move more towards like training MMA as a whole thing, like MMA grappling at least, or MMA clinch work, there's always going to be a link between MMA and other martial arts like Ju-Jitsu. But the other thing that means is that as the UFC expands into different markets, I am interested to see if, well, because obviously at the moment there's a big push on China, right?
Mm-hmm.
I always wonder in China, like how big Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is and how big, I don't know, what is like Wushu, I think is meant to be the standard Chinese martial art. Obviously, that could bring in interesting techniques, and it's not just the techniques they bring in, but the style they bring in means that other people go, oh, this is going to be really effective against them.
Mm-hmm. Let's
develop this. Like, that's why the calf kick's a thing. Again, to go back to that one, it's because it's effective against a technique that has been brought in. So I am interested to see how, as the UFC in particular focuses on different markets, like if they expand into Africa more, if those fighters are going to start changing the style as well.
Because that's like, what, 10 years ago? Sambo, I didn't know what it was. Like that kind of came.
I mean, you had some early sort of Sambo guys, didn't you? But it was. It was. I know about Sambo through MMA. I don't think I would have. MMA is kind of good for that reason. It does kind of introduce you to a lot of different martial arts styles. I mean, when Anderson Silva came to. I think he was fighting. I think it's when he fought Bisping in the UK, and I went to one of his seminars, and he was teaching. Do you know what toe kicking is?
Or he'd like dig it into their stomach, kind of thing.
Yeah, like into their liver. Like he was trying to teach us to get the point of our toe into someone's liver, and. It was, at the time, it hurt my toes, for one. I don't have, but at the same time, he fought Daniel Cormier after that at UFC 200. Yeah. And he hit him in the liver with a toe kick. And Daniel Cormier held his stomach and doubled over. And I was like, holy shit. He was teaching that toe kick in the seminar he was doing over here. And I just thought that was ridiculous. But
he has a big love of adaptations of the front kick, doesn't it? He's got the Vitor Belfort knockout, which is like a front kick kind of toe kicks to the liver. He must just be a big front kick fan.
He's an innovator, isn't he? He's a bit of a, he's puts the art in martial artists. I think he is, he is someone who just tries things out. Do you know what I mean? Where everyone else is, no one threw a front kick, and Anderson Silva throws a front kick, and then everybody else is throwing front kicks after that.
Didn't Steven Seagal tell him to do that?
yeah. But front kicks are very popular in MMA now, and I think MMA they just do what works, because you don't want to waste time on something that may not be effective in MMA. But then you get these guys that are sort of innovators, like Ryan Hall, like Anderson Silva, that are just willing to try things out and take a gamble on it, and sometimes it's more effective than anyone could have imagined.
I can't remember who said it, so I can't give them credit, but it was someone famous. But they said it's a copycat sport.
I think, did Rogan say that or something? Or maybe, I'm not sure. Yeah, I've heard someone say that, and it's true as well, because same with the calf kicks, same with the Dagestani handcuff and all these other techniques. One person does it, it's amazingly effective. Everyone else copies and is doing it in their own fight. I mean, back in the day in MMA, no one was throwing spinning techniques and
we're throwing spinning shit now.
Everyone's throwing spinning shit, yeah.
We hope you enjoyed that episode. If you did, please consider subscribing to the podcast and checking us out on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram under the name Combat Thoughts. We'll see you next time.